So thanks a million for doing this, first of all. I really appreciate taking out time. I messed you around a few times. I was like, what come hell or high water, I have to do it today because I had to cancel. We had a scan last week and stuff I had to cancel. Um, do I see you drinking a coffee there?
Yeah, of course I got a coffee for this. Coffee pods and was, baby. Come on.
No, is that nitro?
Nitro.
Nice. I actually have a tin of that for later on as well.
Nice.
See that? Yeah, is coffee a big part of your day?
It is. It's I love coffee. I love the process of it. Like I go to Starbucks because I don't feel like there's any, like, in my opinion, legit coffee spots where I live. Like I want to walk into a coffee spot. I want to have whoever's working there to understand the coffee bean and where it's from and the origin of it. I want to wait 5 minutes because I put a design into my cappuccino. I want it brought to my table with maybe a little shot of club soda to wash it down. I'm done. Like I love the process of it. So sometimes I like drinking it just because I enjoy it. It's not like I don't feel like I need coffee, but I enjoy it. It's so yeah, I think it's a part of my day.
And have you got a coffee memory? So like something I like hearing about from guests is like maybe somewhere they were, someone they were with, where maybe coffee was on the periphery somewhere rather than being central, but was present.
A coffee memory.
Surely, I am assuming with seminar staff, you must have traveled around. I'm sure that was. I know Hobart said that was like one of the start of the day of seminar was like someone went and got some.
Yeah, that's always it. I think the best coffee memory I probably have was I was doing a athlete camp in South Africa, and we went to this coffee shop. I guess it's pretty well known there, but it was just awesome. Like the whole vibe and scene. It was like a 1930s like train feel, and it was the kind of dressed that way. And the coffee is very just unique. So I always kind of go back to that coffee experience whenever I'm getting coffee and rate it to that one.
Were you with Chris Hinshaw that time? No.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that was, so we've been to South Africa twice. The first experience I had with that, Chris wasn't with us. It was myself and Angelo, and we went out there for an athlete camp and like a business seminar that we led. And I first got introduced to that spot. But the second time, Chris was with us.
That was Chris's memory when I asked him. But
Was it really?
I just I can just picture him asking the coffee guy a question and following it up with a 25-minute spiel about why he asked the question, or his thought process behind it. I'd say he's so passionate, but I'd say for a coffee shop owner coming in, it's like there's 5 customers behind you, man, just move on.
Right, totally.
You have the Conquer Athlete podcast, and recently surpassed 100 episodes. Congratulations!
Thanks, man.
It's a nice milestone to hit. I hit that recently as well.
Congrats.
Why did you decide to use a podcast as your preferred medium?
I got forced to do it at first. So I've had my online training. I had my brick and mortar gym, and I had my online training business forever. And I think my first client was Rob Orlando when I coached him back to the games, and it was him in Hobart, and I did the running stuff for Hobart. And so ever since then, I've been at the games with the athletes ever since the ranch days back in 2010. And about a year and a half ago, just before COVID hit the US, I was talking with one of my main mentors, James Fitzgerald, about sort of just the process of taking away from just my name and making it into a business. So kind of going through that whole process of pulling away from just people hitting me up to coach them into making it more of a business of Conquer Athlete. And part of that process involved working with a marketing company just to make sure I was doing the right stuff for it. And you got to start podcasting. You got to get into that platform to market, promote, get your name out there, kind of intermingle. So that's kind of how it started. I was pretty hesitant about podcasting for a while. I'm not a very extroverted person, so interviewing people and just kind of being out there was never really something that was sort of on my radar of things I wanted to do. And then I kind of got helped and guided along the way into it. And it's something that I found a lot of enjoyment. Like, I don't think there's any better way to talk to people, to learn from people, to cross promote. You know, like, think about it. Like, you and I chatting, like, you're in Ireland, and now we're going to spark a relationship, and we'll come out to Ireland and we're going to hang out and get some Guinnesses together and go to pubs. It's going to be fucking great, you know?
Yeah. Do you always just invite yourself to
All the time? Otherwise, I'm not going to get invited.
Were you surprised at like any of the aspects of setting it up? Like, were you surprised at maybe, you know, things that you might not have seen as hurdles that you had to cross, like when you were first pitched the idea? Or were you surprised with how it's like how successful it's been, or how easy you've had it to get guests, or maybe how difficult you've had it to organize interviews and stuff? Is there anything that's like maybe taking you a bit by surprise?
I think the process and the setup of it surprised me how easy it is. I don't do the editing for myself, but I think the process of like just marketing it out and having other people do it, I was expecting that to be a bigger ordeal than what it was. From like a guest standpoint, when I first started, I thought it'd be harder to get guests. And I kind of leaned on a lot of relationships that I already had with people. But now as we go on, finding, I think, guests that have an important story to tell that I can connect with, that I don't want to say it's challenging, but it's definitely something that kind of I put a lot of thought into and kind of eat up some of my time, because I want to make sure that people that I'm interviewing, there's something there, you know, between them and myself. So that's turning out to be a little bit more of a process for me, which is exciting. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now with it.
Yeah, I think like so the guest thing is interesting because like the thing that surprised me the most was like how willing people are, like how giving, how generous people are with their time, that they're just, you know, you're reaching out to people that, and you're probably thinking like, oh, this is never, like, no more than me reaching out to you, it's like probably not going to happen. And then it's like, oh yeah, of course, you know, and you're kind of, that aspect always surprised me. But then I think similar to what you're saying there, I think I found that sometimes like I'll organize an interview and I'll be like excited to share the story, and I think like, geez, this is a serious story, like, and then you're kind of relying on the listeners using the trust that they've built up in the other guests that you've had on to buy into this person that they've never heard of, or you know, that they've maybe heard of once but don't know anything about. Because it's easy for them, you know, if you get like Shane Orr on, people are going to listen regardless. Like they'll listen just to listen to him, like regardless of what he's saying. He could just say the word diarrhea over and over again and people just think, God, it's so profound. But like when you get someone who's you know, and obviously Shane gives you really good content, he's a genius, like, but when you get someone who like has something special about them, there's always that, like, I always get that kind of anxiety of like, fuck, I really hope that people trust me enough to be like, I'm going to listen even though I don't know who the person is. Like, I assume it's going to be in line with the other episodes and stuff. So yeah, I think that's always something I battle with. And then another issue I have is like, I have this irrational guilt of, say, if I'm recording with you and I know that this is going to go out on like the 14th, that's my plan for this. And then if I record with someone else later on and that's not coming out till the 28th, I'm like, God, is that person going to think now that I've forgotten about them, that I'm not going to release it, whatever? Like, it's so irrational, because I'd say as soon as a person hangs up, they just forget about it until they see it on Instagram or whatever.
Right.
You know, you rack your brains about that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but maybe I'm just more socially anxious. I don't know.
It's crazy, the stories we tell ourselves, right? And kind of like how we buy into those stories oftentimes. And
it's only when you say it out loud, though. Like when I say that out loud to you, I realize how stupid it sounds. Like, it's totally irrational. But like I have in the past, like, lay awake in bed thinking like, God, I wonder does you know, Jedediah Snelson think I don't value him as much as I value someone else, because his is coming out 2 weeks after I talk to him, whereas the other one's coming out the week after I talk to that person, you know, like that kind of stuff. And then if I actually stop and think about it, it's like, don't be a fucking idiot, like.
Right. Yeah. You know, athletes are the same way, right? Athletes will tell themselves stories about who they are, what people perceive them to be, or what they perceive with inside of a workout. and they'll start creating so much more anxiety within inside themselves before the workout starts. And you realize that some of the athletes who are the freest to compete are the ones that tell themselves less stories about themselves in regards to training or competing, and yeah, everyone goes through that.
Yeah. I was looking up, so fucking hell, you're a qualified guy. So like, I counted 51 like certifications, and they're just the ones that were listed. I'm sure there's others. From like level 1, level 2, that kind of stuff. A CrossFit football certificate, which I literally never heard of in my life.
That's back in the day. That is back in the day. Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think that, is there any possibility that CrossFit are just making up courses to keep you busy?
I think so. Dude, that we did some stuff back in the day when CrossFit first opened. They had some great stuff. Mark Ripito was creating like this exercise of science course, which I loved. I went to school for phys ed and health and exercise science, and so they did that course, but then that never really got traction. The CrossFit football course, which is now Power Athlete, right? Because John Wellborn left. There was some awesome stuff back in the day. I mean, you open up the journal back in like 2008, 2009, and you had so many writers in there and so many authors and professionals sharing their knowledge and expertise around the sport of CrossFit. That's something I would love to see come back. Actually, Dave Cash and I were talking about that. The original paper of the journal, which is what they used to have, and the articles that used to be put in there were just so profound and interesting from the development of CrossFit and of fitness and what is fitness, so, and that's something that I've always just, something that moves me is learning. I'm always looking to learn, and every year I'll try to set out to do other like 2-3 more certifications or courses throughout the way, just to continually develop and grow.
You mentioned 2008 there. That was CrossFit Milford was established in 2008. I was curious, like, has that become anyway self-sustaining, like as an organism now, or does it still require the same like time investment and stuff as it did? Maybe not. Okay, like, the first 2 or 3 years are probably totally abnormal compared to the rest, but have you gotten to a point now where you can kind of maybe step away for a few months and step back in, or is it still as demanding?
It's a great question. I think my personality limits me from experimenting that to find out. I'm too ingrained into the threads of what I do to ever really be able to step back. And I've stepped back a little bit more lately with the development of Conquer and working with the athletes and our coaching mentorship track and those other facets. Whereas I don't coach as many classes a day, but I'm still in here every single day. And from an organization standpoint, I'm still very in interweaved with everything that's happening. Yeah. I think just my nature, I'm not one to ever really try to step back. But if I had to, I think it's at the point now where it's pretty self-sustaining. I think I did a lot of work over 2 years of just the systems and developing operating procedures and enforcing the operating procedures and making sure like the really finite X's and O's of a proper business management standpoint are like really tight, because I think that's what everything stands on from a brick and mortar, and those are pretty dialed in.
It was interesting. I listened to, I think it was on the Power Monkey podcast, and you were talking about that kind of getting your procedures in place, and it was interesting. You mentioned having like what would you call them, like member templates where you found out what was important to which type of member, and like you got them to kind of list their priorities of, do they give a shit what it looks like, or do they care about the programming, or do they not care about the program? Do they only care about the environment when they arrive and who's there and stuff? I thought that was very interesting. And then you were talking about this was maybe like 2 weeks into COVID, I think. COVID was a very loose, it was just kind of a throwaway comment at the beginning of the episode, and I only listened to it the other week, so it was kind of refreshing not to just have the whole interview about that. But like, nobody anticipated it was going to, like, what was going to happen, or how sideways things would go. Like, do you think were those procedures and those systems and like the community at Milford tested more than you expected to be tested? And like, or did it give you maybe more opportunity to test those systems or to fine tune them a bit more?
I think yes to both. I think going through COVID and what that created allowed me to test the systems in a way that I kind of had to test them. You know, I wasn't really pulling away from anything to test them or experimenting anything to test them. They're just being tested. Did they drive? And everything from the system was based around the single concept of driving value. And if you drive value within inside your members, and you create loyalty, and you create people, and you create a community. So it pretty much forced that experiment even more with, did they value what we were doing? Did they value it so much that it created loyalty and community where they were going to continue to stay on board and support us no matter what we were trying to do within inside that time? And I realized that they did do just that. You know, the people that put in the time and allowed us to build a value for them from what they perceived as value, they had the loyalty and they stayed on and they supported and they did everything they could to help us out. And we continue to stick to those concepts of values, even when people weren't physically inside the gym. And we try to continually bring them that, right? So if they valued the facility, then we would continually work on upgrading the facility throughout the time and make sure we were talking about it. If they valued programs, we continue to work on bringing them proper programs that they could do at home, they could do with limited equipment. You know, if they valued equipment, we'd make sure we show that we are upholding the equipment or working on getting new equipment, continue to drive what they valued. And that tested it. And the result was good. You know, it allowed the gym to sustain and we even grow. We had some people throughout that time come back to us. So it worked, you know, and it was scary, but it worked.
Do you ever, like, I know some people, it might be an ego thing, but asking public opinion or like that kind of thing of like, you know, what do you want to see? Like, is there ever a fear that would be a sign of weakness or a sign of like, you know, lack of direction or anything? Where I know sometimes myself, if I'm ever tempted to put up a thing of like, what guest would you like to see or whatever, I kind of sometimes stop myself thinking like, no, you should know like yourself who you want to have on, like, you know, like, and again, it's probably coming back to that, a story I'm telling myself or whatever. But like, I think sometimes, especially with gym owners or business owners in general, there might be a thing of like, I need to know, I'm the captain of the ship. Like, I need to know where we're headed and how we're going to get there. And I need to show like strength. And I'd say maybe some people might feel that it might be a sign or it might be perceived as weakness to be like, what would you like to see us do more?
That's a great question. You know, and fear to me, I look at fear as a false perception of the future. And you're not really dialed into right now. And I'm not saying that fear doesn't exist, because everybody has fear. But anytime I feel fear or anxiety, I try to dial into the exact present and what's happening. And I look at, well, do I perceive that as fear? Like, where's this story coming from? I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but anytime I hear people start talking about like a fear or anxiety or anxious about something, I often look at that as there's something that happened or occurred to them that's presenting that emotion inside them as that comes back up. I see that with athletes all the time. It's like they might have a perception of fear around workouts or movements, and it's not really that, but there's something that occurred that's creating this fear, whether it's from a lack of performance, a lack of living up to what they think. And the thought and the idea of perception on fatigue or fear, I mean, that's real, right? So for myself, I don't really look at that as fear. I more or less see those situations as, all right, well, I need help in this thing, you know? And I think some of the bravest people are the ones that can really step out of themselves, be like, I'm not really sure what to go or the direction where to be in. So I don't really have a fear around that from what people will kind of look at me as around that. Cause yeah, I'm supposed to be the captain of the ship and steering the ship and holding true on what's happening. But I have other fears, I think, around like the success of things, you know, that kind of keep me up at night. Like, man, like if I go all in, can I be successful here? Can I continue to grow and develop this? Can I be the person who I see myself as? And whenever I kind of feel that or sense that, I try to really come back to the main point of where I am now and where that's coming from. Did that answer your question? I feel like I just kind of rambled all in like 800 different spots.
No, yeah, I think you covered it there.
Okay.
Community like in CrossFit is probably one of the two or three like unique selling points, I guess, of the whole thing is that that aspect of you belong to something and there's a real buy-in to the community side of it. And I suppose engaging the community is something that every affiliate, or most affiliates anyway, that's set up, it's one of their pillars that they try to do is get an engaged community that's involved and, you know, that thrives. But it's also something that's very difficult to do when the bodies aren't in the room, like when they're on Zoom or when they're at home or whatever. How did you circumvent those kind of barriers when you were trying to keep your community engaged? Was it through those kind of posts where you're like, you know, here we're painting this wall, we're doing this to the change rooms, we're putting in showers, that kind of stuff? Or did you have like, you know, any kind of like outreach that you were aiming to do as well?
Yeah, so we did that. We tried to do like live stuff. We would do coffee talks like twice a week with members on the Facebook members only page, and have people kind of chime in, just hang out. This one time we did like Cards Against Humanity, kind of, and like a virtual format. We did like Never Have I Ever, just like weird, stupid things on like Facebook Live that to kind of get their minds away from the bullshit they're going through, but also try to bring everybody back into like this group. And that stuff we did drove some of the most traction within inside of our community during that time. Was stuff that had nothing to do with fitness or health, but it was just a space, a time for them to be around people and think about different stuff. Like we'd do like live Zooms at night, like wine nights, and have them kind of grab some wine and hang out for a little bit via Zoom. So those things create a lot of traction.
Yeah, I think like I know for myself, if there was a Zoom quiz or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Part of me would do it out of, you know, like, oh, I don't want to let them down by not being there. Like I want to show support for them by turning up as well. But as well, I think something like that compared to, oh, I'm going to log in and do a Zoom class, you know, I think other people might echo my sentiments towards like exercising and training during lockdown and stuff, that it's fucking hard. Like it's hard to, especially when your gym is in your kitchen and you're seeing it all day, every day, and you're constantly reminded, like it can be very difficult to lift yourself to do it. So I think those, you know, the weird, different kind of things that you do, they're the things that, as you say, they get more traction because people buy in. They're like, oh, all I have to do is like sit there and have a bit of fun. That's fine. I don't have to like do burpees on a wooden floor in my kitchen. Like, you know, it's a bit more easy to access, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
When did Conquer Athlete become something that you felt you needed to start?
So,
like, were you coaching people just as yourself first?
Yeah, for a long time I was coaching people just as myself, and you know, it's like we've been to the games 12 years. I've had 9 people podium at the games. I've had a team podium. I've had probably over 30 people make the CrossFit Games, and these are all people that I worked with on this one-on-one. But I realized that if I wanted to make that into a true business that had legs to stand on, I needed to make it into a business. It couldn't just be like just myself. Because doing that with the way I coach and how I program, I don't do templates. I do all individual design aspects. So if I'm doing an individual design aspect, like there's a lot to that, from assessing, training, testing, but also getting to know my clients so I can coach them. Because when you coach someone, you have to coach somebody around their archetype. And coaching is way more than just saying, hey, do X's and O's, because it could be the most extravagant program in the world. But if there's not buy-in or trust between the coach and athlete, then the program is not going to work. And with that being said, too, everything is about a stimulus. And if you don't understand the person, not just their genotype, but also who they are as a person, then the stimulus that you're looking to drive could be completely inaccurate. And yeah, it could work because anything new is going to work at first, right? Like I could fucking Zumba in a hula hoop and I would fucking become fitter for a week and a half because I've never done that before, right? So the act of really getting people to their greatness or to their genius really dives more than just what you put on paper from a periodization standpoint or mixed modal standpoint, whatever you want to classify it as. It comes down to, as a coach, understanding that athlete and understanding who that person is, what their fatigue limiters are, what their mindset is, what their dialogue is, how they respond to training sessions, their recovery, all that. So at some point, as you know, because my kids are getting older, I got 2 kids, I have a wife, I have the brick and mortar spot. I need to create a business around my virtual training business. I need to make it something where I'm able to develop coaches and develop more time for myself, because I wanted to get into more mentorship work and working and training with other coaches. So that's kind of like what really spawned Conquer. Really anything in life, right? Things get created out of 2 reasons: one, desperation, or extreme purpose. You either be completely desperate, where like I need to fucking lose weight or I'm gonna die, right? Or I have to start moving, I have to start eating better. Or extreme purpose, where it's just something that completely moves you and inspires you, right? So for me, it was a little bit of both at that point, where I was desperate in the fact of I needed to spend more time with my family. I could not keep working around the clock between the brick and mortar coaching classes and also doing the one-on-one online business. So I had to create a team, I had to create a staff and a system to build a business, sort of like they're out there, right?
But like
And then
building a brand is, I suppose, and a reputation in your locality is one thing, where you can have word of mouth, or you can have, like bring a mate days or whatever, and they can come in and see the facility and see what it's about and get a feel for it or whatever. Like, I assume it was a lot more challenging doing that when you started out Conquer, like that there was, you were kind of, I guess you're still relying on word of mouth to a certain extent, and you're also relying on people being aware of your reputation and being aware of the achievements that you've had in the past as well, I guess.
extremely hardest thing I've ever done, because I did it and I started during COVID, where at that point everybody had an online business, right? And it was kind of like everyone was kind of jumping around and doing their thing, but on top of that, creating the brand and the awareness, it's a very saturated market, right? Yeah. So our approach is really putting in the tried and true principles that we believe in from a strong developmental standpoint for the business, that are going to continually to slowly build every single year and build and build and build. Like you have someone like Matt Frazier, he's going to open up a program. He's going to automatically jump out with 500,000 people right in a program, right? Like, who wouldn't be? You want to follow what Matt Frazier's doing, but that's not really what we're going for. Like, we're going for a true sound business. And I'm not saying anything against his business. I'm just saying from our standpoint, developing that individual design business, having it grow, be successful, having a strong mentorship program, being one of the most sought after programs in the world, and doing it steadily every single year. So it's going to get to the point 5, 6, 7 years out, where then it's created what I want it to be created.
You mentioned there that the individual aspect of, how everyone's different and how everyone will respond differently, and you need to cater for, you can't, like, a cookie cutter will work to a certain extent, I suppose, and then it'll just nothing will change, or you'll revert. You've had some incredible athletes, like, I suppose either in the elite field, like Brooke Haas or Connor Duddy or people like that, and then if you look at the elite, like, masters field, like Ron Ortiz, like, do you find coaching someone in their 20s like Connor, and then someone like Ron, who's, he's been there, he's done that, he's been to the games like 8 times, he's in his 50s, he has different demands in his life, different, like different stages of relationships, different stages of careers, all that kind of stuff, maybe less time than Connor would have. Like, is it so radically different coaching those two people, or are you reliant on, say, their openness and their honesty, and I suppose their understanding of themselves, to say, like, Jason, I'm not going to be able to do that, like, or, oh, I'm able to do more than this, that kind of thing?
It's a great question. And I think it's a little bit of both, because lots of athletes, and it really doesn't matter what their age is, they have this feeling where if a coach writes it, they have to do what's and everything, to me, from an effective coach athlete standpoint, comes down to communication, right? I look at it like a marriage. I have to be able to communicate to them in a way that they're going to understand it. And when they're telling me something, I got to pull my ego out and I have to listen to it in a way where I can hear what they're trying to say, whether that's from a good conflict standpoint, or it's from a developmental standpoint. But what I have to really look to do as a coach is understand how this person best communicates. You know, is it someone that I can be like, hey, listen, you fucking suck today. Like you have to suck it up and keep going. Or is it someone where I have to be a little bit more gentle and really understand like what's happening, what's breaking down, why is this causing that? And so the differences between someone like a Ron or like an Annie and someone like a Brooke and a Connor, there's all small, subtle, integral details of how I coach them to be effective with them. Some people I have to say less. Some people I have to say more, right? And I think for each athlete, the more I can communicate with them to understand that, the better. And I think from a coaching standpoint, it really comes down to stripping your ego away and understanding like you're not there for you, right? It's not about me putting up Instagram posts and trying to get more followers because I'm coaching this person or look what I'm doing for that person. It's like, well, how can I most effectively give this person what they need to be successful based off who they are and where they are in their life, right? Like you take someone like a Annie Sakamoto. She's a business owner. She's a mom. She's a wife. She works for CrossFit, right? So right now, like we're prepping her. Like she finished, I think, third or second worldwide, and she hasn't competed in like 2 or 3 years. And finally this year, last minute, she's like, all right, I think I'm going to try it again. I'm like, cool. So like our training up until this year, up until now, was just about health, longevity, and doing stuff that kept her excited and fun, but kept her like right there on the brink to be able to kind of put her foot in the water if she wanted to. And she did. But a lot of it with Annie's like, is like that trust issue where she knows if she comes to me and she's like, listen, like I got to coach, this coach is out. So I have to coach 6 classes today. I got 3 PTs and I got to get my son to his baseball game, my daughter to her dance recital, and I got to be home to cook dinner. Cause for Annie, she cooks dinner for her family every single night. I'm like, all right, well, let's just do A and B and get you fucking home, right? Otherwise, like the training session is gonna suck for her, right? And for Ron, he's a firefighter, so his shift's crazy. So he's got to trust that he can tell me, we had a crazy night. I was up with 3 crackheads so they didn't kill themselves and at a fire, and now I'm back at the firehouse on 2 hours of sleep, and now I got to do the quarterfinal. How do I do that, right? And that's the big thing with Ron is going into the Open. He had 2 weeks where he was working the night before, the entire weekend. So it's how can I best manage his stress levels in order for him to perform and not be overly fatigued from a neurological standpoint or a metabolic standpoint. You take someone like Brooke and Connor, and you got to understand like what are their stress factors and limiters, and how do I need to communicate around them so they can still be successful? And yeah, they're not parents or spouses or different with that stuff, but they still have their own stressors, right? Whether it's financial, whether it's their boyfriends or girlfriends, coaching classes, the stress of making the games again, which is one of the hardest things to do in our sport, right? So everyone has different stressors and everyone has different things that are going to cause them anxieties and fears, or things that can put them in an uneasy situation. And how can you best communicate with them to coach them effectively and still provide the right amount of stimulus for adaptation to get them where they need to be? And it's tricky, absolutely, but it's it comes down to just communication.
Yeah, like speaking of Annie and Ron, I think it's great seeing events like, I know you had Eamon on talking about the Masters Fitness Collective, and they're continuing beyond. I suppose that they appeared last year to fill the void that was left, and the same with the Pit Fitness for the youths. But like, I think I spoke to Roger from Norway recently, and they're setting up like the European Masters in like 2022 and stuff like that. Like, and it seems like it's a really exciting time for that side of things. And I think Masters is something that Eric Rosa earmarked early doors as like something he wants to look at. I mean, probably selfishly because like he's in the Masters category.
Right.
But like, do you think that will include like a higher purse, or like any more incentives, or do you think it's mainly going to be more opportunities to earn or more opportunities to compete and to showcase yourself? Because like, 10 grand for on the table for Ron, who, as you say, has, a lot of things pulling on him in different directions and balancing work and everything else, like compared to 300,000 for someone who this might be their full-time job, like it's not really earth-shattering amounts of money, really.
Yeah, I hope it does lead to a bigger purse. I hope the Masters community is huge. I don't know the stats. I don't know if you know them, but I think over half the registrations for the Open
Yeah.
were Masters. It's like it's such a
It's only going to get bigger as well, because the more people, like, I mean, I'm going to be a master's in, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
yeah.
going to keep anyone that's currently in, say, the open field is, if they keep doing it, they're going to end up in the master's field.
The
So like,
Masters is the Masters is the biggest field, and it has the potential also for the most, if you look from a business standpoint, revenue standpoint, because they're the ones with the money, right? They're not 21-year-old kids not working, just training, right? So I only hope that with the direction that Eric has alluded to, that the Masters are going to be showcase a lot more. They're not going to be like, stuck in a barn stable going on at the same time as the main people when no one's going to really watch them, right? I hope that it gets to an area almost like it used to be. I think what they did at Carson was really cool, where the Masters would be there the week before, because then like the showcase was just the Masters, and they competed on the main floors and the main stages, and they did all that stuff, and it was just them. They weren't kind of like stuck in barn stables. And I want the Masters to continually to get showcased, and I think the purse should be a lot higher for them. There's so many of them, and what they do, I think everything should be kind of like this equal level playing field, I guess, how to sum it up from a showcase standpoint and a purse standpoint.
Yeah, like even if they took the 300 from, say the first, and they've alluded to the fact that it's going to be bigger. So, I mean, it could be just 300,000 and $1, but if they took, if they took the 300,000 and split that as a first place for all of the different age groups, I'm sure it would still work out at more than 10 grand. So like, I think, fair being fair, I think they deserve, maybe not equal, because surely, there's probably more razzmatazz around the elite field. But like, as you say, there's more earning opportunity. Like if you just look at it like pure coldly from a business point of view, I mean, a master's is going to have money to throw around on t-shirts and gear and, flights and trips and that kind of stuff. Whereas, as you say, someone who's maybe coaching a couple of classes to make ends meet and, like eating rice and chicken and just trying to get there, like any way they can, maybe getting a couple of bucks off sponsorship deals and stuff. There's a lot more earning opportunity there from the masters. So yeah, hopefully it's recognized. You also offer coaching mentorships through Conquer as well. I was curious, like, if I was to put you on the spot and ask you, like, what is like the most common pitfall or trap that you see coaches fall into when they start out first, what would you earmark as that?
Nowadays, I think the most common pitfall is not understanding how to decipher the information based off who they want to be as a coach. When I was first coming up, the problem was getting information, right? Like if I wanted to learn something, I'd have to go to a seminar, to pay money, fly out, do the course, whatever it might be. Now you can get so much stuff for free via the internet. It's one click, one button away. But it's like, what's the right thing to do? And I think that's the biggest pitfall with a lot of coaches starting out, is being inundated with too much information and then learning how to properly decipher that for an application standpoint for themselves into what sort of space or platform they want to carve out for themselves in the field of strength and conditioning. So I think that's the biggest pitfall. And that's one of the biggest things I try to work with on the coaches. The mentorship is completely individualized. So if it is information that the person needs, well, then that's what we start from, from a grassroots effort of understanding basic principles of strength and conditioning, and then how to apply methods to that. But for a lot of people, it's like, all right, well, they understand the principles, or for that matter, they might understand 800 different methods. Well, what's the principle around those methods? Because if you understand the principles, then you can always look to decipher what you need to do to be successful for the person. But if all you do is gather information around methods, and you don't truly understand the principles, well, then you're going to hit roadblocks all the time. And then other people, it's just like, all right, well, you have all this stuff in your head. Well, based off that niche that you want to create, what should you be doing? What's really important? What's not important? So to me, that's really the biggest pitfall I say, is just the proper decipher of information for the right application for them as coaches.
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think there's a separate episode with you on like that kind of stuff, because I think, you know, there's so much to unpack, but
Yeah,
it's so difficult not to just get lost in the weeds, like, and you know, go down a rabbit hole, because there is a warren down there of like, even that one simple question, there's so many different things that, like, that's just one pitfall that you've named there. And I'm sure there's people listening thinking like, oh shit, I did that. Or like, oh, that's definitely, I fit into that category. Like, and I'm sure if I asked you for 10 pitfalls, you could probably name them just as easy. Like, you know, it is common, there's common, I guess, human error, or, you know, I think as well, like people trying to wear too many hats, and people, you know, trying to be something different to each person that they have, or each person that they work with. And it's, you know, kind of, I always come back to that KISS thing, you know, I keep it simple, stupid, where
totally. And that's it. Like if you talk to some of the greatest minds in strength conditioning, excuse me, it's so simple with them. You know, like you talk to Dan John, who's like a legend in strength conditioning, and it's so simple from a programming standpoint of how he creates strength, right? And those same things apply, but oftentimes we get wrapped up in all these different methods, right? You look at the principle of building capacity. Okay, we know the principle is A, B, and C. Well, the methods are like A through fucking Z, right? So it's like, well, I'm going to do this on Tuesday and this on Wednesday, and then you wonder after a couple of weeks, well, why is their progress kind of ceased, or why they're always fatigued, or why they're heading towards an overtrained state? Because we're just fucking them up on all these methods that aren't barring to the principle of what you're trying to do, right? And that's a huge pitfall for a lot of people.
Well, look, we finished with a quick fire.
Whew.
They're mostly either or. So snatch or clean?
Clean.
Coach or compete?
Coach.
Ski or row?
Row.
Run or bike?
Bike.
Dumbbell or barbell?
Barbell.
Favorite conquer athlete? No, I'm only kidding.
I was like, motherfucker.
I always like to throw in one red herring at the end. Well, listen, Jason, thanks. That was great. Like I said, I think we'll have to get you back on someday to unpack some of those smaller suitcases, or maybe deeper suitcases, because I think, yeah, you've got a serious amount of information there. People can find you on Instagram. I'll share all your stuff on Instagram, and then Conquer Athlete as well is the name of the. So you got like coaching on there for individuals, and you've also got your coaches mentoring system as well. So there's something there for everybody.
Correct. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I had a blast. This is great.